Hi, everyone, and welcome to another live Guide and Grow event. I am so excited to be streaming across all of our platforms today. But before I begin, I would like to do a quick acknowledgement of country. First, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which I am from, the Darug people, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and future, for they hold the memories, traditions, and culture of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here in Australia. So, whether you're joining us from our Facebook page, our Facebook group, we've just hit 250,000 members on our Facebook community. I'm so excited. We're live streaming along LinkedIn and also on our YouTube channel. If you guys are watching the replay, you're welcome to hashtag replay. Let us know where you're tuning in from. For everyone that's joining us live, feel free to comment where you're listening in from, any questions that come up along the way. Today, I am super excited because I have one of my favorite Montessori experts and positive discipline experts. I'm going to introduce her in a quick second, but thank you firstly for taking the time out of your day, night, afternoon, wherever you're streaming from across the world to join us on this amazing journey of learning. And today we're really going to be talking about growth through movement. So we're really going to explore that first year of infancy. And without further ado, I would love to introduce our special expert and guest today. It's Jean-Marie Paynel, your parenting mentor. Hi, Jean-Marie.
Hello. So happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Sylvia.
That's all right. It's my pleasure. I'll read out a quick bio. For everyone that doesn't know who Jean-Marie is, let me introduce her and do a quick bio. She's a mother of 2 adult children. She has a master's in Montessori education. She's AMI certified from birth to 6 years, a certified positive discipline educator, a birth doula, author, and a parenting mentor. I'm so excited for our topic today. Tell us, Jean-Marie, for everyone that's listening that might not know who you are, why is this child development and Montessori so important to you, and how did you actually come into this in the first place?
Well, I think it started originally by becoming a parent myself and just being so intrigued by what my children were learning and how I could best support them. And then fast forward, when my firstborn was 8 years, I decided to kind of do a shift in my life. And I went back to school to get my master's in Montessori education. And there it was just like, oh my gosh, this is just invaluable information. Parents need to know about this. Why didn't I know about this and all of this? And I've just been on a mission ever since, the past 20 years to really share what to me is just, Dr. Montessori was a genius before her time. And I think her revelations are now being proven with brain scans. And it's just, amazing information to, I think, really empower us to trust the beautiful unfolding of our children's development and to trust our own instincts and just make parenting a beautiful journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's look, the support that we all need in that journey, whether you're a parent or educator, specifically in the first couple of years, it can be really hard and such a whirlwind. And we know that information overload these days on the internet. So it's great to have people that you can support and have that as a mentorship. And I know today we're going to really be going into movement and child development in that first year of infancy. So let's get underway. If you are listening in, guys, if you're watching the replay, if you are live, say hello. Don't be shy. Let us know where you're listening in from. We've got Brianna from Michigan. I'm in Sydney, Australia. And for everyone that's listening out there, please feel free to comment your questions as we go along. You're welcome to ask any questions that are relevant, and we'll pop them up on the screen and get Jean-Marie or myself to answer them. So we have some pre-submitted questions. The first one is around Montessori, the Montessori term, which is called freedom of movement. So how does Montessori encourage independent movement, specifically in infants? And like, what are the benefits? How can parents really foster that in their environment?
So basically, it's understanding that we all human beings go through a, developmental milestones all over the planet, no matter where you're situated, your religion, your economic, whatever, it is always the same. And to me, it's fascinating when we think that within 12 months, the infant human is going to go through all of human development, because they are born, first they have prenatal life where they're a little fish and in liquid, and then suddenly they're born, they're slithering, they're crawling, they're standing, and they're becoming the human being that is on two legs, right? So it's amazing the evolution that they go through that first year. And so when we talk about freedom of movement, it's really important that we as parents or educators are aware of that, so that we can create an environment that is going to be free of obstacles, that are going to really give them the opportunity to discover what they are capable of, right? One of the first psychological leg in infancy is that we trust the world, right? We are welcome. We trust our caregivers, and we know we're born in a safe place. But the second one is trusting ourselves. And that comes right at the beginning when we explore what we're capable of as we move. And so it's really about preparing a home that is going to let the child explore what their body is capable of. So that means to refrain from contraptions where we have to put them in, where they need our help to get out of. I highly encourage the floor bed, what we call the Montessori floor bed, which gives them the ability to move freely, and such. So it's really about being very mindful to look at our environment and what can I do to encourage this beautiful natural unfolding.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you mentioned the floor bed, we might dive into that in a little bit of time, because I know that we've got lots of questions. We always do have that about that. When we talk about a safe environment, in that infancy, and to kind of, we're talking about the movement that's really important. What does that look like, in a home? Is there anything specific that you would encourage, in that first year? Because I know that sometimes people might, restrict that movement, or place their children in what they consider to be a safe space. Is there anything that you would recommend in terms of the environment itself?
So this is going to kind of sound kind of silly, but I highly encourage the adults that are in this child's life to get down on the floor, sit on the floor, and see the environment from the child's perspective,
Yeah.
even crawl around to see where they might get themselves into situations, because I want to encourage you to create a yes environment where the child is going to be able to explore, where they might open a cupboard and go look in or whatever. So we need to be very intentional and make sure that it is safe. So kind of, go through your environment before, especially before they start crawling, because they're going to go everywhere. So we want to make it as inviting and as safe as possible. And if there are rooms that you don't want to do that in, then it's okay. Close the door. But the rest of the kind of the rooms where we're together as a family and such, try to make it so that they feel they can explore everywhere, as opposed to maybe putting them in a playpen where you're going to feel like that they're safe. Like, that's not giving them the opportunity to really go explore and move and pull up on something and so forth. So, and then if we want to have, like, if we really want to set up a movement area for the infant, what I recommend is really a very, thin mat, maybe a thin futon up against a wall. Eventually, when they start sitting on their own, so this is all natural development, right? We're letting them get into those positions on their own. Once they're sitting, they become primates, right? They start reaching for things. And this is a great opportunity to maybe put what we call a coordination bar on the wall with a mirror. And the sight of these little people, raising up and standing on their 2 feet is just pure joy because they're going, oh my goodness, I can do this, right? So they can trust their body. And again, it's about making an environment where they can get into those situations themselves. We don't need to prop them up in anything for, the exercisers or things like that, because that is not natural development. They're not getting there on their own.
Yeah, absolutely. That's two really, really great points that John Marie just mentioned. The first one is getting down at your child's level. I know that whenever we set up the environment, even in our classrooms or in a home, I will literally sit on the floor and have a look around and scan the whole place to see, am I able to see what's happening in the room? Are there things in my way? Are there things that might be dangerous? Because you don't know when you're at an adult level until you actually put yourself down there and see what's going on. So I love that advice. It's really practical and something that everyone can take away and actually go and do that in their space as number one. And the second thing is about having things around in the environment where children can pull up on. So even if you don't or you can't put a bar in, due to rent or things like that, you can have those little move around like cushion. We call them I
Mhm.
don't know what you call them
A
in the
little, a
States.
little, a little wooden
Like an
wagon.
ottoman. Yeah,
Yes.
there's a wooden
Mhm.
wagon,
Mhm.
or you can even put like a little ottoman around where the children
Exactly.
can kind of like surf from one little thing to another.
Mhm.
So those are two really great things that people can take away and implement straight away.
Mhm. Mm.
The second question we had was, are there any particular developmental motor milestones that parents should look for in babies' motor development during the first year? Now, I know that question is a bit of a big question because there's a lot happening in that motor development, from actually propping themselves up to being able to roll to standing to crawling to all this sort of stuff. So, are there any particular ones that are kind of stand out in that first year?
Well, one that I think we don't mention enough is actually infants are born with a lot of reflexes. And there's
Mm,
certain reflexes that are going to disappear as they develop. And I know that if some don't, and I'm sorry I didn't uh, have the specific ones, but there's some that, like for example, the Moro reflex, which is that reflex where they kind of are startled if they feel they're going to fall, which sometimes is why we want to, hold them tight and such. That disappears, right? And that to me is something to kind of look out for, because if it doesn't disappear, there might be something going on in their development. So just being aware that there's certain reflexes that are going to disappear with time, and to just be mindful of that. Now, the big milestones for me is, first of all, what I think is beautiful, but it's fine motor, but it's just the discovery of their hands. They are born, they're born clenching their fist, and suddenly they open them, and suddenly they go, oh my goodness, these are mine. What do I do with these? Right. And it's just this beautiful sight of them kind of looking at their hands and examining them, and then trying to start reaching for things
yeah.
and grabbing and all of that. So that is a beautiful development. And then the other one, gross motor, is, rolling over, being able to sit on your own, then being able to crawl. Crawling is a very important, milestone that we need to really let them go through. And that's why I say to be careful with contraptions that might hinder that, right? Because a child who's maybe always put in an exerciser is already on their 2 legs. So they might skip the crawling phase, which is very important. So
Mm.
those were, we could go into a lot more details, but those are kind of some major ones to be mindful of.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with the point of not putting your children in a certain contraption or something that will prop them up and support them, because every single milestone or the crawling phase or the commando crawling or whatever it is that they're doing is really important for their body to have that natural development. So a lot of the time we think, oh, we're supporting them by putting them in something, but actually it's probably more of a hindrance than anything. And we know that
Right.
it comes back to the freedom of movement that we were talking about at the beginning. So yeah,
And,
definitely.
and and I might add to it also, Sylvia, is because I still see it, and I know people are more and more aware, but it's the car seat,
Oh,
the the bucket that the infant car seat, it's very convenient to just pick it up and take it with us and leave the baby in it. But it's not great for their development because they end up being always in the same position. So try to take them out, put them in a carrier on you, take them in your arms and such, so that they have different movement and different sensations.
Yeah, great suggestion. The next one we're going to talk about is neck strengthening. So this is one of the first challenges that babies have, and you see how their heads all wobbly, and they're really trying to get that stabilization. And sometimes we're putting them on their tummy, and they're trying to kind of and they get really upset really quickly. I know lots of parents they struggle to put their babies on their tummy because it's quite uncomfortable. But what are some playful ways to, I guess, encourage tummy time or support that neck muscle developing? What would you say?
Well, I mean, for one, I just want to backtrack a little bit and just explain what is going on and why that is happening. There is something that happens in our body as we are born that is called myelinization. And an infant is born with the only thing myelinized is the being able to swallow and suckle. And this is a process of a kind of this fatty shield that is going to be put so that we can make connections, right? And it goes from the top down and from the middle out, which is why the hands, I was saying, they're first to clench, and then once it gets there and they can open them up. So that's why their neck is wobbly, and that's why we hold it up, because it's not quite there. So, and that's why, again, I will say encourage natural development and let them go through this process on their own timeline. But to encourage muscle strength, for me, as an infant, just having them on you, like you lie down and have them on you. It's beautiful, skin to skin. You're in contact. You're seeing each other, and they're looking up and they're strengthening their neck. Or if they're lying down, you lie down on your tummy and face them or next to them, and look at images or books together. To me, it's about doing it naturally with you at the beginning, so that there's also a connection. Some children don't really like being put on their tummy. So that's why, to me, it's better to do it together and not to force it. I'm not one to want to force it. They will eventually roll over and they will eventually need that strength. So at the beginning, do it together so that it's fun and loving and a connection.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so once a baby can control their head and they start focusing on controlling their limbs, like bringing their foot to their mouth, and they love sucking on their toes and all those fun things and grasping onto things, and
Imagine being able
um,
to do that today. Like
yeah.
we can't do that, right? They're so
We yeah, that's right. We practice so much yoga and I still can't do it. These are things, and they start rolling over. What kind of activities or things do you recommend? So once they do start focusing on things, I mean, I know that we talk about black and white, a lot of the black and white imagery when they're newborn to start focusing and their visual development, and because babies start developing color at around 3 months, so they're still in that gray scale, for anyone that's listening out there that didn't know that. So what would you then, once they start grasping intentionally and grabbing the foot and things, like what kind of activities and things could you do in the environment to really encourage that development?
So for me, it's there's a whole, in Montessori, there's a whole series of mobiles, right? You talk about like the black and white, that Munari, that's the first, visual mobile. So there's a series of visual mobiles, but once the child starts reaching, and at first they start reaching, but it's not very intentional. We want to put some mobiles that they can grasp, that they can grab to, that might even have a little sound to it, so that when the hand hits it, it's like, oh my goodness, I did that, right? And we can also put one at their feet. There's this beautiful, it's a takane ball, or called a puzzle ball, that's cloth, made of cloth, and you can put a little bell to it, and then they start kicking and they realize that they are controlling that, and it's just beautiful to see kind of their brain, going, oh my goodness, I'm doing that. So grasping, things with for the feet as well. But I would say really be intentional and keep it very simple. I think today we are inundated with a variety of toys and contraptions and bells and whistles and everything, but the child is focusing on just one thing. And so let's keep it simple so that they can really focus on kicking that ball that's going to make the little bell sound, or grasping just a wooden ring that's on a ribbon that maybe has a ribbon made of elastic, right? So there's a little tension to it, so it's going to go away. And then the other thing is, on that movement mat or on the floor or on a blanket on the grass, have very minimal toys that they can start reaching towards. And this to me is very important, for us to step back, and even if we see them kind of struggling to get there, to really be intentional and observe and let them go through that struggle to reach that toy that they want, because that is where they're going to develop their strength. That is where they're going to develop that trust in themselves and be able to, develop all the movements that they need to that first year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think keeping it simple is the best advice that I got from that, section, because a lot of the time we think, oh, we need to have like the multiple pop-up things and the noise and the this and the that all happening at the same time so we can entertain, but we don't realize that if we actually slow down, which is another thing I was going to mention, and we just watch and observe these babies moving intentionally, and then discovering and all that, that you actually see how much is actually going on, and they don't need a lot of that overstimulated toys or things that pop up and make noise and all that, but they actually just love having those simple. Yeah, and this is what Maria Montessori discovered in her curriculum and the practice. And we've got lots of videos for anyone that's listening that wants to see these items that we were talking about on Guide and Grow TV. We've got 0 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 9 months. And in those videos, I will showcase all of the items that we were talking about just now to help you set up your environment. So we'll pop those in the links as well for everybody. Okay, our next question. Crawling is a huge milestone for babies as they become more mobile. When a baby can control movements, they begin becoming more mobile, including crawling, standing, and walking. How can parents best prepare for this transition while supporting the child from a Montessori standpoint?
So I think we already kind of touched upon it, in one of your first questions, and that is really preparing the environment, really looking at your environment with intention, so that you can create a space where they can explore what their body is capable of. And that might mean that your home that's been very adult centric before your child arrived is going to change a little bit, but this is temporary. This is just a moment in time. They are not going to be crawling forever or slithering forever, right? But if we can put some, pillows down low on the ground, maybe make sure that the bottom shelves of the bookcase are free of things that are fragile that you don't want them to get into, or maybe put a toy that they would be intrigued with, right? So create a space for them to be able to crawl and walk and so forth. I think that to me is really the most important. In Montessori, we talk about the prepared adult and the prepared environment. And within that environment is the adult. So this adult, us, you, everybody watching, needs to be extremely mindful and respectful of what the child is going through, and that they need their time and their focus, and that we do not interrupt their concentration, because even an infant who is just, staring at a shadow on the ceiling, they're focused, they're concentrating. So be mindful to observe when a child kind of comes out of their flow, and then you can interact, right? You say, oh, you were watching the shadow or the fan or, whatever it might be. And the same with movement, really, to be able to let them struggle and try to get somewhere on their own and be there. You can sometimes do kind of sportscasting, right, when you're kind of letting them know, oh my goodness, you're really wanting to go get that toy, and you can do it, and that, and you don't need to. It's just about observing. And then I think when you observe, you're able also to kind of tweak the environment, right? Because their needs are going to change. So if you see them maybe always being interested with something, then you can maybe get another activity that might be similar. Or if they are, constantly getting into something you don't want them to get into, then that's your sign to just get it out of the way temporarily. So we're always observing and preparing the environment for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And also preparing ourselves. Like you said, John Marie, like it's a huge transition, especially for those people that are listening that have their first infant or child. Like it's a huge transition in your life going from you and your partner or a family environment to now having this new infant around. And it's not a bad idea to have a look at the space and say, well, you know what, how can I actually cater for that new member of our, community and family? And it's just a particular stage in time. It's not going to last forever. Don't worry, your vases will go back up and the candles will go back up and,
Exactly.
everything else that, the lamps will, it will look all pretty and beautiful. But at that time, it might just be, this is what I feel is going to be best for my, infant or baby at this stage. And it's going to really have its benefits, in their
Yeah.
development when we look at how they're moving and interacting in the space. So yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I always, Sylvia, I always like to, when I'm explaining this to parents, I always say, imagine you're having a house guest coming, maybe an elder aunt who's traveling and who needs the environment changed a little bit because she's using a walker, for example, right? They're just coming, and you're preparing the environment for them, right? You're freshening up the room. You're It's the same thing with your child. They're just going to stay around for a bit longer, and their needs are different, but you're just preparing the environment for an amazing guest, and that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love
Yeah.
that analogy. That's so great. Let's talk about sensory and tactile input. So that's a real staple in a Montessori environment. Like I know that especially in that 6 to 9 month phase, they're really sensory. They want to touch everything. They want to put everything in their mouth. They're trying to understand the world around them. What can they do? What can parents and caregivers do that include or exclude from the environment to really help support their babies' like growing need? Or I would probably even encourage you to talk a little bit about what kind of things would be of interest in, that sensory tactile kind of phase.
So for one, I will say, let them. This is a normal, important phase. We have to understand that the child, those first 3 years, we say they are a sensorial learner, and so especially those first few months and such. First of all, their senses are still developing. Their auditory sense is developing. Their eyesight is developing, and they're very tactile. So let them gain information from their environment by touching things, by putting them in their mouth and such, because the mouth is where there are the most senses, and that's why they do that. So it's true that there are some things we don't want them to put in their mouth. So that's where we prepare the environment so that we're, aware and intentional about getting anything, that might be dangerous for them to put in their mouth. But be okay with whatever is safe around that this is a need, because the sensorial experience is the foundation for everything, for language, for understanding the world and everything. It's really the foundation. So we really need to let them experience it. And for me, where I always say is to encourage parents to share the daily task with their children, even very young, even if you're cooking or preparing things, let them smell, let them touch things, let them, put the carrot in their mouth and chew. They're not going to, they don't have teeth, so it's not going to, be, they're not going to bite into it. Later they will, and that's fine. It's more about, I would rather that they have natural sensorial experiences than,
Mm.
for example, just plastic toys that look like a carrot or look like an apple. No, I want them to have the experience of what an apple actually smells like, feels like on their mouth and such. So involve them with, what we call in Montessori practical life from the very beginning, right? Have them, they can be in their little lounge chair on the kitchen counter while you're preparing, and you're talking to them and you're letting them know, and you let them smell. I remember, actually, I'm having a flashback. My daughter, I remember I would do that, and we had a what we call a lazy Susan with all the spices on it, and she would want to smell all of the spices. And today she's an amazing cook, so maybe that's what it was about, and she uses a lot of spices, but that was part of her sensorial need at the time. So be okay with just living with them and sharing your day-to-day experience.
I think that's a really great point that a lot of people miss. So I feel like a lot of people will say, "Oh, but babies don't understand." You know, "Oh, but
Oh.
I know I have a big issue, Jean-Marie, when people tell me that. My red kind of horns come on like, no, that's not true. So, a lot of people out there, if you think or ever have the thought that a baby cannot understand what you are saying, you are completely wrong. They totally, just because they cannot express back to you in verbal communication, they are totally taking in everything that you're saying, everything that's going on in their environment, and it's all being filtered in. And if you actually just slow down a little bit and observe them, you'll see non-verbal communication coming back to you, and that is fabulous. So please do not underestimate your child. Doesn't matter if they're 3 months old, 6 months old, 10 months old, they totally do understand, and you need to treat them just as you would as any other person in that home. Right, John
Yes,
Marie?
yes, yes, yes. Infants, I mean, from day one, I'm also a birth doula, so I get to see these newborns, a minute after their birth, and they get it. They know what's going on, right? It's just amazing to see that connection. And so, like you say, it's also what Dr. Montessori described as the absorbent mind. It's that mind, those first 3 years, that is absorbing everything, right? The
Yeah.
good, the bad, our emotions, everything. They are understanding, they are tuning into all of that. So being, really having them participate in the day-to-day life, I think, is really taking them seriously, taking them for extremely capable
Yeah.
little beings. And I always say, children are adults in the making. So we need to be extremely respectful. And there's a beautiful quote from Dr. Montessori about how we need to pay respect to the child, to the newborn, just because of what the capabilities that they have, right? To me, it's like this divine being that we are in the presence of. So, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. And I feel like it's not taken as seriously as it should be. Like I feel like there's so much lost in that first year because people don't see them as
Mm,
capable, confident, respected, or that they have this divine, just amazing. It's just, I love being in the baby class because you just see, all this development and everything happening, and how much connection they have with everything around them. So, absolutely.
yeah.
For everyone that is listening that wanted to know about the activities that we were talking about, I'm just going to pop up some things up here. So we've got the Montessori activities 0 to 3 months. We've got the 6 months, the 3 to 6 months, the 6 to 9 months. So in these videos, you will see all of the things that John Marie and I spoke about. We've also got the 9 to 12 months as well. So they're all in our chats. So in this live event later on, you can just go and copy and paste those along. And I know we did have one question here. We did speak about this before, Jean-Marie, but maybe there was something else that we missed. Caroline was asking what specific Montessori items do you recommend for pulling up and walking? So yes, we hear a lot about the walker wagons and the pull-up bars, which we did speak about earlier, just in terms of, when they would use either. Maybe let's just explain that a little bit more, what that looks like, when the walker wagon, or when to use a pull-up bar, or if you use both, or if there's something else.
Right. So the pull-up bar, or what we call the coordination bar, is, and this is not, necessary, like you have to go get it, but it is a very simple thing to do in your home. And it's basically a bar that you are going to put at the height of where, when they are sitting, where their hands reaches. And basically, this is going to help that instinct that they have within them to get on their 2 feet, right? Because as I was saying, that first year, they go through human evolution where, they're slithering, they're crawling, they're sitting, and then suddenly they're on their feet. And so it's an instinct where they start reaching. As soon as they're able to sit, their hands are free, and they start wanting to pull themselves up on things. So like you mentioned, an ottoman, or a coffee table or something, they're going to naturally pull themselves up. So the bar is just something that we could add in their environment. And it's nice to have it in front of a mirror, because then they get kind of feedback also on their body image, their body scheme, and it's just wonderful. They look so proud. They don't recognize themselves just yet, but there's just like this real excitement in them. So the bar is really, once they are in a sitting position, that they've gotten there on their own. The push wagon, what we use that more is to, when they start wanting to actually use their feet and start walking, but they don't yet have their equilibrium. They're not yet stable on their 2 feet and balance. So they're basically just pushing around this little wagon. And it could be sometimes, it can be a little chair that they're pushing around, or another object that is, not going to damage your floor or such, that they can push around. And that's just helping them practice walking. And then eventually they're going to want to let go of it and walk on their own. And that's the same thing with the bar, because the bar, they're kind of going back and forth, side to side. And then at one point, they're going to feel confident enough to let go of it and start walking on their own.
Yeah, absolutely. What about, let's talk about that, because I feel like so many parents put pressure on these milestones, right? Oh my gosh, my child is, whatever months, and they're not crawling yet, or they're not commando crawling, or they haven't done that, or they've just started to stand, and they've only gone to walking, and what happened? They missed that stage, and oh my God, my child's not going to walk. And and especially as a first-time mom, I hear it, it's like this panic because their child isn't meeting these milestones, but their neighbor's child is, and the person next to them. And please offer some parents some advice on this, Jean-Marie, because I feel like it's so important, for us to really reassure parents to really trust their baby's natural development.
Yes. And I would just really, with loving kindness, encourage parents to just pay attention to your child. Give them the love and support that they need. We all have our own unique timeline, and we will all go through the same, sequence of event. We're going to, slither, roll over, sit up, crawl, stand. So, but we are on our own timeline. There is no specific day that is going to happen, just like there is no specific due date. They're estimated due dates, and it will happen when you and baby are ready. So the same thing with movement development. I think we need to really be very intentional to stop comparing ourselves with others. And this, unfortunately, with social media and all that, has been, it's kind of rampant, where we're looking at what other people are doing, and we're going, oh my goodness, my child's not doing that. just pay attention to what your child is doing. And I would encourage to develop the skill of being what we call a scientific observer, so that you are really watching your child, because they're going through different milestone every day. And it's just like, fall in love with that, like pay attention to that, and kind of put blinders on. Don't worry about what the other ones are doing, and they will get there on their own time. So don't
Yeah,
worry.
absolutely.
Unless
And that's
unless unless I'm going to say, unless of course you have a doubt, you have an instinct that there's something that's just not right, then yes, ask a professional and say, I'm concerned. That's fine. Like, there are children who might not develop something the same way, and that's okay. But just pay attention to your child. They need you to focus on them and only them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to add that point just before you mentioned it about seeking support. So if you do feel that there's something not right, and all parents and mothers and caregivers have gut instincts, listen to that gut instinct, listen to that, and seek professional, assistance if you need that support as well. So definitely not discounting that. But yeah, focusing on your child instead of comparing to, this one's walking and that one's on, and my child isn't crawling. And I always point out that maybe that child is developing another skill or another area of their development at that time that is more important for that child before. Because I have say a 9 or 10 month old in one of my classes, and the mum was saying, oh, he doesn't really roll, he always just stays on his back, and he's not really rolling or crawling. And oh wow, look, that 10-month-old is pulling to stand. Yeah, and she was really concerned, and I'm like, well, just from my observation, you can see that he's really engaged in a different area of development at that moment, and that will come too. But it's just about being observant to, like you said, to that particular child and what's happening for them. So,
And you actually bring up a really good point, Sylvia, is that there is movement development, but there's also language development. So the brain is also, trying to figure out, like, what is this language we keep talking to me and all of this. So there's some children that are verbal way earlier, but they're not
yeah.
moving as much as the child who is, big movement. So, like, be okay with who your child is, and what they're going through, and just trust the process that they will get there eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got another question that came in. What advice do you have for when a baby tries to straighten their legs to stand, but they aren't even crawling yet? Is doing something like holding the child in a sitting or standing position on our lap, when they enjoy it? You know how you see sometimes,
Mhm.
parents will prop up their baby, and the babies are kind of like trying to extend their legs type of thing. Is something like that, Montessori aligned or?
So we try not to put them in positions that they can't get themselves into on their own, right? So that would be it, but knowing that it's an instinct for them, like the minute that their toes touch a surface, they're going to want to stand. Like, you try that with an infant, it's like it's an instinct in them. But definitely I would encourage, maybe to not do it too much, because I see parents like, oh, it's so cute, and they want them to pretend that they're walking and everything, but their legs aren't just not strong enough yet. So it's really about letting them be on that movement mat and letting them get to that position on their own, so that they do go through all the different milestones. And like I mentioned earlier, crawling is a very important one, because it's the midline, it's alternating, it's going to be important for walking and all of that, even for brain development. So we don't want to skip that, you know too much. And that's why also I mentioned earlier about contraptions where they are already on their 2 feet, and they tend to end up missing that whole crawling phase, which then might cause issues, and then you have to see an occupational therapist and so forth.
Yeah.
So better to just let them go through all of these milestones on their own timeline, naturally developed without, propping them and such.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much for that.
Mhm.
I want to really finish on talking about like the Montessori principles. So I know that we were talking more about like movement and development in infants, but I want to know what are some of the ways that we could really integrate Montessori principles like into the daily routines to try and foster or that, motor skill in infant development. Now, you did mention about the practical life component and, bringing like allowing the infants to be part of our daily tasks or routine. Is there anything else about the principles that you would mention, about respecting the child or about seeing them as capable or any ways that we could kind of, encourage that through infancy?
So, I mean, my biggest one is to slow down. Slow down
Yes.
and learn to be at your child's pace. Spend as much time in nature as you possibly can. Go in nature, go on long walks, lay on a blanket and just look at the leaves of the trees or the clouds. Just slow down with them. There is so much information that they are soaking in, that they are taking in. And so I think it's helpful also for us, and it kind of teaches us that patience and to be in the present moment just like they are, right? So that we're not worried about what's going to happen in the future or what we just did. We just are there with them. And for me, one of the biggest, kind of idea about Montessori is what I mentioned earlier about being a scientific observer, like to really tune in to observing your child for who they are and what they're doing without judgment, without preconceived ideas, without worrying about what might happen. Is just like enjoying the moment with them here and now. I think that to me is the most important, and I think calms our nervous system, and helps us just enjoy this journey that is a fleeting moment. It's a fleeting moment. You hear people say, "Oh my goodness, it went by so fast." It really does. So I know that those parents, of young children who are in the trenches right now, you think it will go on forever, and it's like, when am I ever going to sleep again? All this. Trust me, it will. It will be okay. You will get through this, and try as much as possible to slow down and be at their pace so that it doesn't feel so hurried and stressful.
Yeah, and I think that's the hardest thing to do in today's society, right? And the reason why we have the baby classes is to give parents an intentional hour and a half to slow down and be
Mhm.
at their baby's level and, interact with them. And, the biggest thing I always say is slow down your movements and your, talking while you're trying to show, an infant something because their brain is operating at such a slower level than us. And it's hard for us because we're so used to operating in that adult space that we just assume, that they're going to pick up everything as we're talking and, and trying to show them things. So I think that's such beautiful advice and to enjoy that moment because everybody agrees that when they hold an infant or a newborn in their arms, how much do we feel like we're on the most peaceful place on earth,
Yeah. Yeah.
if only we could have those moments all the time.
And you brought up a very good point about, slowing our movements. I actually use the acronym SHOW, that when we are trying to help a child understand, something that we want them to do, or even, an infant on how to use a toy. And so SHOW stands for slow hands, omit words. Because if we are wanting to show our child, how to manipulate a toy, for example, their eyes are completely focused on our hands. So we need to slow our movements and stop talking completely, because if we start talking, they're going to look at our mouth, right? So we want to really disassociate. We can tell them, "I'm going to show you how to, do such and such." But when we do it, we really intentionally slow our movements and we stop talking. So SHOW, slow hands, omit words.
Yep, we've just popped it up on the screen there. I also have a YouTube video on that. So that's also explaining everything that John Marie just mentioned. So I did not mention at the beginning of our live, which I will do now. For everyone that's watching the replay, this is your last chance to ask a question, by the way, to John Marie before we wrap up this amazing discussion that we've had. I did want to say, wherever you're listening in from, if you did have a question that's come up while we are not live, please feel free to type them up into the comments, no matter what platform you're on. Either Jean-Marie or myself will answer those questions as we go. So even if you are watching the replay, thanks for being here. You're welcome to ask a question. And I know that Jean-Marie has an amazing offer for all of our Guide and Grow community. And I really wanted to talk about that because I didn't mention it at the beginning, but she does have a special discount code for us as well. So, John Marie, would you like to tell everybody a little bit about what you're doing and what you'd like to offer?
Yes, yes, thank you. So I have created what I call the parenting school. So it is a 5-week kind of in-depth look at Montessori, positive discipline, your role as the prepared adult, our home environment, how to prepare the home environment, and so forth. So it's 5 weeks of videos that I send. You also have what I call a family guidebook where you can, basically I'm helping you create that manual that we're never given as parents, right? So we're going to create it together. And every week we meet live on Zoom where I answer all of your questions and help you strategize around whatever is going on. So that is the parenting school. I know Sylvia is going to put the link in the comments, and I was offering 20% for all of you in this amazing Guide and Grow community that Sylvia has created for all of us. And when you use the coupon Guide and Grow 20, you will have actually, I don't think there's an and. It's just Guide Grow 20. So Guide Grow 20 is in the coupon. You will have 20% off of the for the parenting school. And I do hope you join me. The doors have just opened. They will close next week when I start sending out the first module and we start having our live calls. This is something that I do every year, and I just love it, and parents love it, and it's where you can get support and understanding on how to be the very best parent you can be.
Absolutely. And we've just popped up the link there for everyone who wants to join. There's the code. So we will be posting that on all of our platforms. We've got it on our Guide and Grow, on our YouTube channel, everywhere. We're going to pop it up in the group for you guys. This is your opportunity. I'm so grateful that Jean Marie has given us all 20% off for the enrollment. It is a wonderful opportunity for you to work with a Montessori expert, a parenting expert, and she's been around and she's done it herself for a long, long time. So it's really nice to know that we've got support, in our role and having that manual that nobody gives us, to really help you on your journey. So once again, thank you so much for being here today, for sharing your knowledge with us, for giving us an insight into the work that you do. And I know that it's going to be such a valuable video for years to come for people to watch and learn about that baby, movement and development in that first year. So thanks, Jean Marie. Any final words for our caregivers and parents around the world?
Just enjoy the journey. It is like I said, it is a fleeting moment. Learn to see the world through your children's eyes. You will rediscover so many beautiful things, and you will discover what they are sensing and such, and just slow down and enjoy.
Thank you so much. What beautiful words to finish up on. And guys, until next month, we will have another amazing event coming up with a different topic. So stay tuned for our next amazing expert. Jean Marie, thank you once again for joining us live. And to everyone out there, have a wonderful day, evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Until next time. Bye, everyone. Take care.